my goal is to continue to chip away at this problem, right? To help investors make more money by buying co-living houses, to make their experience owning the houses really seamless, but also provide a ton of affordable housing units everywhere.
Welcome to Generations of Wealth podcast. I am your host, Derek Dombeck, and today we are tackling the problem of affordable housing and co-living. Oftentimes, we all look at possibility of maybe the government is going to supply the shortage of housing, and we all know that's not going to happen. So today I've got Johnny Wolff with us, and Johnny, he founded HomeRoom, which has just recently sold to Bungalow, but it's a platform for co-living and sharing space. So awesome episode. Before I bring Johnny on, again, thank you so much for following Generations of Wealth podcast. Help us expand, spread the news any way that you can. We really truly appreciate it. Jump onto our Facebook group, Generations of Wealth Facebook group, anywhere you see us on social media, share it, like it. These are all the things that we all know we need to help each other. So with that, let's get on to our show. And here comes Johnny Wolff. Well, Johnny Wolff, thank you for being a part of the Generations of Wealth podcast. I appreciate your time. Why don't you tell my listeners a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Johnny Wolff. I'm the CEO and founder of HomeRoom Co-Living. And we recently were actually acquired by Bungalow, which is the largest player in the co-living space. So I'm helping them basically help investors buy and rent out co-living homes. A little bit about my kind of background. I started my career in the Silicon Valley in finance and started to do real estate investing shortly out of college. And found that I was making a lot more money from investing remotely and real estate than I was from my day job. So I moved to Austin in 2015 to invest in homes relatively full time. I rented out each of my homes by the room, and in Austin at that time, there was a lot of demand for that. And so it went really well. What didn't go super well is managing roommate houses, which kind of was a bit of a mini nightmare every once in a while, and generally not that bad. So I started HomeRoom, which is one of the, until we sold, was one of the larger co-living companies in the country that ran roommate houses and helped investors find homes remotely as investments and rent out each room separately. So we did that from 2018 to 2024, and we sold the Bungalow just now, and now we're kind of taking the next step with them to help investors buy co-living homes as assets. So that's a bit about me.
Well, there is a whole lot to pick apart there for sure. I'll give you a little bit of my background with the co-living side. I did the same thing with used to be a group home, and then we turned it into a 12-bedroom, 6-bath property, and again leased it out per bedroom, usually on a nightly or weekly basis. So I am familiar with the management side of that and the joys of management that can come from that. But I guess before that, how did you decide what was your start in real estate, and then how did you get into the co-living scenario?
Yeah, I connected through a family friend to someone that was running a property management company out of the Permian Basin in Texas. Midland, basically, where Friday Night Lights is based out of. It was in 2008, and you could do 10% down investment loans at that time, which was sweet. So I bought a new property for like $96,000, and it went really well. So I started to do that again. I bought one with myself, directed IRA, and did a few other real estate investments. So that was really what got me started in real estate investing. And it was definitely had a few negative moments where we had like a heavy turn, someone left and it was $10,000, which I think is a good experience for any early investor to have. So you can kind of be ready for the inevitable downside of real estate. But the upside was really good. When I sold that property, I made $100,000 in my 20s. That was a ton. So it was really exciting. So
You're telling me you couldn't just buy houses in California for $98,000 with 10% down?
yeah, I spent a good amount of time looking and no, I couldn't find anything really. So good, great question.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
Yeah, yeah.
So with the co-living side of things, though, I mean, obviously affordable housing is an issue all over the country. What is
Mm.
the advantages of doing that, and then how do you set up a building for that?
Yeah, the advantages, there's a number of them. One is that we're trying to get 50% more rent from the same house, right? So we want to, when people come talk to us, we show an example of a property that one of our investors bought and it was renting when they bought it for $2,000 a month. And then by the time we had finished setting up and renting out by the room, it was renting for $3,000 a month. So obviously that's a compelling math equation, right? 50% more rent, and investors like more rent, at least the ones I know. Um, so that's the big kind of reason that it's appealing is that you can drive the revenue higher. It is a more complicated management approach, so fees will be a little bit higher. There'll be a little bit more headache. But the good thing about a company like HomeRoom or Bungalow is we do everything, right? So we have a lot of expertise in doing that. I definitely know a ton of people that did house hacking slash roommate rentals by themselves, and I've done it a ton myself as well. So that's an option too. And I'm always I'll get emails every once in a while about people who are renting out by the room themselves and for tips and tricks, and we're happy to share those because it feels like it's really helpful in today's affordable housing to help with that.
Did you run into a lot of challenges with different municipalities, as far as short living or short-term rentals, or non-related parties living in a property together, ordinances? How do you get around that, assuming you did have that challenge?
Yeah, it's a great question. The short-term rental is not a challenge for homeroom or for bungalow. We generally, the minimum lease is 3 months. Most jurisdictions don't consider anything over 3 months short-term. Some consider anything short-term, and then we'll adapt to that. So we're really long-term rentals at its core. Um, you know, there are options out there that will do shorter term, and you mentioned you do weekly, which that are daily. Wow, that's a
Well,
lot. It
I
sounds like
let me clarify. I did. Um,
okay,
I
yeah,
don't anymore.
okay, yeah. I that sounds challenging to say the least. When you have single family rentals, not as many variables. You add shorter term, you add a lot more variables. You add multi people, more variables. So um, I think doing short term rentals or multi people rentals, I would do either or, but together is gonna be an interesting experience for sure. Um, yeah. So and then in terms of encountering with municipalities, like we are aware of city restrictions. That's something that we do. We think of returns and risks. They're both along a spectrum, right? Short term, we think of single family rentals. Returns are gonna be the lowest. The rent's gonna be the lowest, right? Co-living is gonna be in the middle, and at the top end is gonna be a short-term rental. And then we think in terms of compliance or city risk. Short-term rentals will have zero risk typically. There's some fringe, but not much. Co-living will have some risk, and short-term rentals will have a lot of risk. So just like anything in investments in the world, the more risk you take on, the more returns you can possibly get. So we have a protocol in place for how we address that with our investors. We say, hey, are you interested in pushing the limits of occupancy that the city has? Right. There's one operator in the space who does that with nearly all their properties. And they have a process for dealing with cities to mitigate the issues when they come up. There's other operators in the space that just fully comply with the city's operation policies. And you can kind of do either or. The reason we think of this as a much lower risk than something like short-term rentals is short-term rentals can get turned off like a light switch. Like in San Diego, they went from you can have short-term rentals as many as you want to you can have one if you live on site. Massive change, right? And with co-living and roommate rentals, it's more they'll turn you down, they'll dial it back versus like turn it off. So that's what we like about it in terms of risk mitigation. So yes, definitely an issue that the industry faces. But one when handled well, we think it makes sense. The risk profile makes sense for the additional returns you get.
So in terms of the property itself, you've got a single family home and maybe a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Are you just utilizing the existing layout, or like in my case, I took all the common areas, living rooms, formal dining room, all that stuff, I turned it into bedrooms. Put up partition walls, things like that. What does your model look like?
Yeah, we're open to, I would say typically we're more in the customize the space model, right? One of the things that Bungalow has is they'll get more rent than a typical roommate rental company because they have better technology and kind of a better experience, right? So there's some premium to it. So we can get away with fewer bedrooms than other operators and still do really well financially. I think the challenge, when you have extra space and you can turn it into bedrooms, it's a lot of money, right? It's big margin. The cost to create a bedroom is not terribly high.
Mm-mm.
So the more bedrooms you add, the more of the risk profile pushes up the investment, but also the higher the yield and performance goes potentially. So we will do both, but we'll kind of work with the investor. What's your risk profile? How much do you want to invest up front? There is risk here with the city. How do you want to manage that? And how do you want to think about it? And so that's really sort of our approach. We'll kind of go super conservative with less, or we'll go more aggressive with more. And it's kind of up to the investor to choose their own adventure there.
Well, an adventure is probably a great word for it, because on the surface, you're like, well, great, I can add an extra bedroom or 2 bedrooms. Now you just added an additional 1 or 2 or 3 tenants, which adds another 1 or 2, 3 different challenges when it comes to personalities and people getting along and things. What's your experience been with um, the social aspect of it?
Yeah, no, that's where we really thrive, right? Because between Bungalow and Homeroom, we've housed 10,000 roommate tenants. And so we've used investment from venture capital to build a really beautiful meet and greet system where the roommates and tenants meet each other before the move in. All the move in process is heavily automated by technology. And then we have built out really robust tenant support teams to support those issues, right? We've seen every type of roommate interaction. Oh, actually, I'm going to knock on wood. We've seen a lot of roommate interactions, and I'm sure that we'll see new ones, and I'll get an email on the weekend, and it'll be even crazier than possible. But generally, it's about managing complexity, right? Every business is about managing complexity, and this is something that we've gotten extremely good at managing the complexities of co-living and roommate interactions. So it's not really something an owner has to worry about. I cannot think the last time we've had to get an owner involved in roommate issues, but
Okay.
we handle it. Yep.
Any dead bodies you've had to deal with, Johnny?
Are you talking about metaphorically or realistically?
No, realistically, tenants.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think every landlord has. So yeah,
I,
not it was yeah for sure.
I always ask that question because a lot of, and I'm in Wisconsin and the upper
Mhm.
Midwest, a lot of mom and pop investors, so they don't have a lot of properties maybe, but in our group setting, we did have one that passed away, and what I found interesting, out of 12 units or 12 bedrooms in that property, about half didn't even know it happened. The other half didn't even care. And it wasn't foul play. I mean, I've had those too, but this one wasn't. But
Mm,
ultimately, as a property owner, we can get nervous about, is this going to negatively put some kind of hex on our property, meaning nobody's going to want to live there ever again. And it
mm,
crossed our minds for sure. But it's amazing what you get used to in this business, and you deal with it and you move on.
mm. Yeah, well said. Well said. It's amazing what you get used to in this business.
Yeah.
Indeed.
You kept saying we. So when you established and started to build homeroom, I mean, I'm just assuming that this came with a lot of tech, a lot of, you know, software and other things below, or, other things that you have to deal with. What, how did you even get past the idea of, I want to do this, and take those first steps? And who was it with? Did you have partners, or is this all you?
No, I started homeroom as my yeah, I started homeroom myself. Um, but I did bring in team members over time and different teams at different phases of the business. And as we sold a month ago, we had 47 team members. So, and a lot of those got to join Bungalow. So it's definitely been, anytime you're gonna scale to 1,000 plus roommate tenants, you're gonna have to bring a we along because it's operationally complicated, and
Mhm.
you know we had investors as well. So a number of different pieces. All those pieces are really necessary to build in this space, which is it's at size starts to get relatively complicated if you want to do a good job for tenants and for investors. But we got there, so pretty happy about that.
No, congratulations. I mean, I know what it's like building businesses, and then taking on staff, and you take a leap of faith pretty much every
Hmm.
day you get up, right?
Every day, man.
Every,
Yeah, definitely. That pressure is very real.
yeah.
I think it, and I don't, I've only, this is my first business with a team. So it definitely is a different animal when you start to have the team interaction cross, when you're remote, you're across multiple states, all these different pieces add little layers of complexity and definitely ratchets up the pressure just a little bit. So,
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Did you have a lot of your team overseas, or was it all in states?
yeah, co-living, single family rental, uh, short-term rental, all these are, operationally property management heavy businesses. A lot of them are fueled by, tech innovation that makes it even more efficient. But yeah, a lot of the team is necessitated to be overseas, right? To drive down costs because you're trying to optimize the equation for investors while optimize the equation for the business. And our overseas team was invaluable. Some of them are spectacular team members, So we're really happy to be fully global. We became fully remote in 2019 before COVID, and it was really helpful.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it gave us the ability to kind of grow really quickly with not a lot of investment or capital. So it's not easy though. There's definitely little challenges to overseas team members. There's time zones. There's native English fluency isn't there, even though they're excellent at it for a second or third language. But it saves you a lot of cash. It adds a lot of horsepower, and it adds a lot of complexity.
Well, 100%. And as my team, who is partially overseas, is, working on this podcast episode and puts it out, I
Yeah.
appreciate you. But you know, no,
Yeah.
it honestly, if I went back 20 years or 21 years ago when I started in this business, trying to even comprehend what would it be like to have people all over the world working with me and for me on my behalf, I think it would have been
Mm.
impossible to even fathom. And now it's impossible to even fathom doing it without them, or people like them. It's definitely a global business now, and I love it. I think it's great. And
Yeah.
The same thing with
But
co-living. Co-living isn't brand new, right? That's been around for thousands and thousands of years, but with innovation, it can be so much better and smoother, which I
hmm.
guess leads me to the next question is what do you see for the future of co-living?
Yeah, I think one of our investors, venture capital investors, like his, his belief is that COVID is inevitability, right? Is that some version of technology colliding with real estate investing, colliding with housing, necessitates co-living to be done well. And I tend to agree with that. I think it's complicated and nuanced in its housing and its community and it's all these pieces. But in every market that exists, renting a room is cheaper than renting out a studio, right? This is in Thailand. People do co-living in Thailand. We've had conversation where it's like, why isn't this only in San Francisco? Well, because it's cheaper in Thailand too, right? And some people are looking to optimize community and they're optimizing price where they live. So there's a need, and I think it can be done better globally. And I think the opportunity is global. I think it's challenging and difficult because you interact with property operations. But we're seeing some companies in Europe, some companies in the United States, like Bungalow and other players, expanding. Some of the fastest clips that we're seeing in property operations technology in the entire industry. So the need is there. It satisfies a massive need. The question is, how do you optimize all those equations for the value for the owner and for the tenant? And then how do you get it out there as quickly as possible through technology? So I see the opportunity is massive and big. I think it's not a if, it's a when. And I think the question is like, when will a lot of smart people who are actively working on this problem get to the point of solving it? It's just like, I almost see it sort of like it took forever. It felt like for voice to text to work. Everyone kept saying this is going to work. They had Dragon software.
Yeah.
Our COO worked on voice to text in the 90s. Like they had a bunch of Stanford guys. They got nowhere, right? And so I think this is a problem where it's like we could write it off that it's had its bumps, but I think it's inevitability. And the question is, when does it break through?
Yeah, and I also would say, and this is maybe a California conversation, and I don't get political, but I just have my own opinions, and I don't necessarily I'm not always PC. Using California as an example, right now, as we're recording this, there's fires going there, a lot of devastation in California, and there's people talking about the rules and regulations and all the red tape on not only getting the fires put out, but then rebuilding. And, you know, as you mentioned, this stuff kind of takes forever to take hold. And then one day it almost feels like a light switch was flipped. But we all know that's not the case. How does regulation and red tape, specifically to co-living, um, hold back the growth? Because I know just with the building that I own, we have a conditional use permit with the city, so we know that if they change an ordinance or they change a rule, it's not going to affect us. But I also have lots of friends in other parts of the country, specifically in Georgia, Atlanta markets, all the suburbs of Atlanta. There's a company down there called Pad Split that was very popular or is very popular, I guess. And they have had some major struggles recently because of different communities and different neighborhoods and all of that, the red tape, right? How do we get past that?
Yeah, that's a big question. Um, and I think, and I know uh, CEO of Pad Split and I think all the folks in co-living, we kind of talk, we kind of watch each other and kind of understand. Um, so I know Atticus and Pad Split. I think, everyone's approach to this has been a bit different. I think their approach has been almost like the Uber approach, where we're going to just deploy it, and then we'll have this, we'll ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Mhm.
Um, I think that approach generally in these kind of situations may be right. It's hard to know what will be the breakthrough. I think at a federal level, there's the Dodd-Frank, or there's sorry, not Dodd-Frank. There is a national kind of Supreme Court ruling that actually kind of Belterre, sorry, that's the correct one. That sort of influences what cities are allowed to do. But there's a kind of a groundswell currently going on with regulation, and Homer is actually in federal court right now fighting that against a city. And I know Pats was doing the same thing. The reality is, for cities to arbitrarily define what a family is, we think that is just doesn't make any sense, especially with the housing crisis, especially with kind of like when you look at, you know, how, why do cities get to do that? So I think, the best, most complete way of is getting kind of rid of the Belterre kind of, um, Supreme Court ruling, and just say, no, you can't really define what family is. Unfortunately, cities, because some cities will say a family is related or it's two people, which we think is kind of wild.
Well,
So there's a lot of push there, and there's a lot of people that can't afford housing, right? So
and
that's a simple solution, very quick to
and
get done.
especially with fair housing laws being as they should be in place, right? I mean, nobody should be discriminated against. And yet the
Mm,
cities are able to discriminate just because they can deem what a family is. Well, in this day and age, we can't even indicate if somebody's male or female anymore without getting into hot water, right? And maybe that's not legal
yeah,
hot water, that might just be social hot water. But
sure.
regardless, now you've got the cities telling you, okay, you've got unrelated parties living in a house and they can't be considered a family. What gives them that right? And we all know there's on the federal level, they can't get out of their own way to provide, affordable housing. So in the private sector, we are able to, and this is me probably getting on my soapbox, but small business owners,
Preach, man.
small business owners have been the problem solvers in this country for the entire existence of the United States. If the bureaucracies get the hell out of our way, and we can solve the housing problem really quite quickly if they get rid of the red tape, right?
Super fast.
Yeah.
There's enough square footage in the United States for everyone to have 1,000 square foot to themselves, right? But for some reason the cities now have godlike powers to define what a family is, and so um, it really doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with anyone in the industry. We're continuing to work around the problem, but we're deploying units that are 40% cheaper than a studio. You want to solve affordable housing, homelessness? We are literally rolling out the solution, and we're fighting every inch of the way to get it to be done. So I think that's one of the parts about working with Bungalow, or any co-living operator, that I think is kind of a win-win, right? Where better rents, but like behind the scenes, you're also providing one of the most needed things in the United States, which is affordable housing. So you can feel good about it, but also make more money, which is a great combination.
Absolutely. So what's your vision for yourself? What's next for Johnny? I mean, I know you're working with Bungalow, but what do you see coming in your future?
Yeah, so I joined Bungalow as their head of co-living. As you can tell, that this is my passion. I love this model of housing. I've loved it when I lived in it for 10 years. So I'd like, my goal is to continue to chip away at this problem, right? To help investors make more money by buying co-living houses, to make their experience owning the houses really seamless, but also provide a ton of affordable housing units everywhere, right? We need them in the coast. We need them, we need them in the Midwest. We need them everywhere, right? Everywhere we've been, and we've been everywhere as a company.
Mhm.
Um, there's been a lot of demand, and a lot of people that are very excited that they can actually afford to live with people that they enjoy living with, and not have to go through Craigslist or something a bit dicey. And
Yeah.
owners are happy that they don't have to think about the 50% more rent they get. So that's really my goal, is to, drive this until there's enough for everyone throughout the entire country. And ideally, the next step would be going global with the product.
So are you involved already or have the intentions of being involved in like selling turnkey co-living properties that are already set up? Or is it more along the lines of helping a property owner like myself convert a property to a co-living setup?
Yeah, so we're kind of right in the middle of those two. We call it turnkey, but it's not turnkey in the traditional turnkey approach, right? Where the turnkey approach that you mentioned is like, it's done, it has tenants, you just jump in. We do kind of like we'll help you find the house on the MLS or off market to buy, then we'll manage the construction with you. So then it'll be set up, but you're going to be kind of the one helping with that process. So a little bit in the middle, not truly turnkey, but we find that people in this space are they have a specific needs, specific wants, and we want to match that house to what that is. And that usually we open up all the properties that are available for sale to do that.
So if I were going to do something like this in Wisconsin, and I just
Uh-huh.
didn't know what my market could bear, is there really a market for tenants? What would that rent look like? Then I have my projected income, so I can go buy a property. I know what I can spend on that property. All of those steps for a brand new person contacting you, um, is that something you help with, or is that on me to go and try and figure out what my market looks like first?
Yeah, I that is on us, right? We have that density. We'll do kind of everything there. Just like short-term rentals, co-living as an emerging space has some wiggle in it, whereas like everyone knows the exact single family rental rent price within like 5%. I could probably find a property in Wisconsin to be relatively accurate with a few number of different tools very quickly. Co-living has bespoke data sets that are owned by like Bungalow or other players in the space. And then we're doing data science on it. That's um, fairly, yeah, fairly advanced to get that information.
Mhm.
So we're helping with that. We're helping with, you pick the price. We'll do a full pro forma showing you like, with our expected occupancy and price, this is how much you're going to probably have to invest to build out the rooms if you'd like to do that. And here's what your returns will look like. So we'll help build that out. We'll help you shop. We provide options and in every market that we're currently operating in to investors.
So markets you're currently operating in, you said you're, in a lot of different markets. Are you
Mhm.
staying in major metropolitan areas specifically, or what's your market levels look like?
Yeah, so today we are deploying more units in the metros that we Bungalow currently operates in. And so there's about 12. In terms of properties that are outside of those metros, we we have a long-term plan for a Bungalow anywhere, where we'll allow our platform to be used anywhere.
Mhm.
That's not currently live and it'll be done in the future. So it's something that is coming, but the timing on that is still kind of a few years out. And so I can't be exactly firm. I could Elon Musk it and say it's like 2026, but not exactly sure, to be honest. So,
Well, I was going to say you feel like the next Elon Musk, so I mean, you could
oh
throw.
yeah, that's yeah, that's true. I'm just kidding. That's a wildly generous compliment. So thank you.
Absolutely. Or I'm just a smart ass. You decide.
Or
Doesn't matter.
either way, I'll take the compliment as
As you
genuine.
should. As you should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Johnny, what's one question I should be asking you that I'm not? And it doesn't have to necessarily be about co-living, it could be about anything.
Sure. I think the question is sort of, is this the right time to be buying single family rentals at all? I think is an interesting question. that we get a lot because interest rates just went up again a little bit.
Mhm.
I think we like to see the silver lining in where rates are today as a situation in which there's way less competition. And like in January with high interest rates, there's even less competition. So I personally, in my investment approach, I love to buy between Christmas and New Year's. That's sort of because usually someone's trying to get rid of their home before the end of the year for tax reasons. Otherwise, they wouldn't have listed it in November. So I generally try to see kind of that opportunity, right? I think we um, we have discounted rates in the first couple years to operate, and then kind of in year three, uh, the rates go up a bit for our operations. So we generally try to. So that would be the question. So I think it's a good time to buy if you can find the right model that will deliver some cash flow stability while you wait for the refinance that we believe will be out there, maybe 24, 36 months. We don't really know the timing, but if you can hold without losing cash, then it's a really good time to get into properties, especially if you're leveraging timing advantages, um, especially if you're leveraging demand advantages. And so that would be my one answer to the one question.
Well, in my world, which is creative deal structuring, I love the model because I can go and buy somebody's property either on really good favorable seller finance terms or subject to their existing really good financing and not have to worry about waiting for rates to come down. In fact,
Mm.
as we're recording this, I have a property under contract. We'll close in a couple weeks, and seller's taking payments at 0% for 8 years.
Well,
And
well,
there's other terms that are included in that. He's getting his full asking price, which nobody else was willing to give him. But the terms for us allow us to cash flow just as a regular rental. So if we turn that into a scenario like this, it would probably 3x. So
mm.
so yeah, you combine your strategy with some of my strategies and you can have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, man, let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah,
I'll send over the contract. So, yeah, subject to, it's not a bad time for that approach, right? So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, as we kind of wind down here, Johnny, I do have a link that people can go to at thegenerationsofwealth.com/homeroom, but that'll get them connected with you so that if they want to work with you. But what does that look like? What do you offer? How can you help just people in general, my listeners, anyone else?
yeah, so you follow that link. It'll help you set up a time with our investments team. Really proud of those guys. A lot of them are investors themselves or have sold a lot of investment focused real estate. So tend to think of them as very knowledgeable and helpful, right? So worth it to book just to learn, I think. Um, and they'll help you kind of start the process. They'll help you look at what co-living is. They'll help you think about the out-of-pocket cost and the long-term results. Um, and so we're offering anyone that kind of mentions this podcast $2,000 in construction credit. A lot of times, these homes, people will modify them or do construction after the purchase, and we'll go ahead and offer that for folks. And yeah, I think it highly recommend folks set up a call with Sean or Umberto or any members of their team, and we'd love to talk to you.
Perfect. And again, that link is thegenerationsofwealth.com/homeroom. And we'll have it in the show notes. We'll have it really easy to connect. And if for any reason there's ever a challenge with that link, don't hesitate, anybody listening to this, just to reach out to us, the team at thegenerationsofwealth.com. We can always get you connected. We have had, a couple people in the past that, hey, a link didn't work here or there. We're always there to make that connection. So, Johnny, I really appreciate your time. Anything that we can all do collectively to overrun the government overreach and help with the housing crisis, I'm for 100%.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the crew, man.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
I'm not anti-government. I just don't want them touching my shit. So uh
Same.
absolutely. Well, again, appreciate you being here. And
Thanks for having me, man. It's been fantastic.
absolutely, absolutely. For everyone else listening, we appreciate you following the Generations Wealth podcast. Go out there and help us spread our message, give us the reviews and the shares and everything that we all know we all need. And until the next show, have a great day. Go out and live your vision and love your life. See ya.